he was always explaining why his opponent had this ridiculous matchup advantage, why his deck was terrible, and how his back was against the wall. And that was the way Bob motivated himself. And I think Shuhei might have a little of that in him.
Do you think that's a case of trying to psych yourself up, or does that sort of vision to be able to see all the ways you could lose help you find the path to win?
It's probably both, honestly. I mean, it's definitely a sign of both Bob and Shuhei's talent that they can see all the flaws. I mean, that certainly takes a really good understanding of the game, which both those guys have. And I think for Bob, I'm confident it was partially a motivating factor. I don't have quite as much insight into Shuhei's psychology, but he clearly is. I think for him, he may also be trying to convince his opponents that they have an advantage. Because he told DeRosa, "Congratulations on beating me," right? Yes. Before the match. And we were walking back from lunch. He was having lunch with Osawa. They know each other from Japan. And was it you who asked who wins? And Shuhei didn't even hesitate to point at his buddy. He wins.
Who was obviously feeling very good about it and pumped the fist.
Yeah, he raised his hands over his arm. Yay, me!
And is maybe not playing with the same tension that Shuhei's playing with. Maybe he feels he's got an easy win. Maybe you feel advantaged. You keep a sloppy hand.
Yeah.
You don't.
But he did. He had a.
No. I'm not saying that's what he did, but I'm saying that's how
Shuhei
that
could be playing that
angle. He does. I think he does play that angle.
He plays every angle.
He definitely is a performer. He puts on a great show.
Yeah, he sees all the angles, both psychologically and in gameplay. Like, I'm not sure that the plays against Antino is one of those things, like that Petro Hydrox play you kept pointing to, where most people might not even realize, this Petro Hydrox is very relevant. This is the way I'm going to get him to tap his Alabaster Wall so I can then, kill something with a burn spell. He sees all of that.
Right. I think the average player puts the Hydrox and looks at the Hydrox in their hand, looks at the two things on the board, and he writes it off as a dead card.
Right.
Doesn't look for how can I use this card to affect my opponent's board so I can do the thing I need to do to win this game.
And the thing that's even better is that Shuhei played that Petro Hydrox, and Antonino tapped it, and Shuhei gave him a look like, I'm such an idiot.
Well, I think he actually gave him the look like I'm an idiot first. I think he played it and then looked over.
Right.
Yeah, to say like, oh no, you can tap it. So in case Antonino missed it,
he
wanted to make sure Antonino found it.
Yep.
So, a nice little. I think that those kind of plays are the difference. Mm-hmm. That's where you see people really separate themselves from the pack.
We saw a lot of that if you go back and watch the archives of Pro Tour Columbus, too, when Shuhei was making that run with his red deck wins. There were a lot of really subtle plays where he was able to eke out edges and eke out advantages with that deck that, some people felt was maybe a little bit brainless, a little easier to play than the average deck. He played against Nick West with that Scepter Champ Blue White deck. Nick resolved 2 Exalted Angels against red deck wins, and Shuhei went through to the finals.
Yeah, he doesn't give up any advantage. He really narrows the margins on every play.
And he's the kind of guy that makes the play. You're not quite sure exactly what he's up to, and 3 turns later you realize, this might happen, and this might happen, and this might happen, and you might wind up in a situation where this little thing matters.
Right. And he always seems to have a plan. That's a really important part of playing Magic. It's not just, my opponent did this, and now this is going to happen.
Right.
I knew my opponent was going to do this, and this is what I anticipated doing in response to that. And that seems to be how he plays the game. He's not just looking at the turn. He's taking a couple turns at a time. So Shuhei is not playing the blue, even though he feels it's the better build, because he pointed out that his deck would be red, would require red, white, and blue, to cast its best spells. But he is blue again here.
Oh, did he sideboard?
He feels like again? Feels like he's up a game on Asawa, and I think he's just, I need the power. I'm up a game, and now I need some power to get the rest of the way through. So, is there a forest in that hand?
Well, Shuhei's mulliganing.
I don't think Osawa's going to be keeping his hand either. I saw a lot of great cards, but no far.
That's what happens when you have 7 spells in your hand.
Really.
Your hands usually look pretty good when they have 7 spells in them.
Man, that doesn't bode well for me, because a lot of times I look at the 7-card hands and I'm not even that impressed with my spells. he does
Forest
have a
Utopia
forest.
Sprawl. That's fine.
Oh yeah, that's
Forest Utopia Sprawl, Spider on the draw.
and if he
That's fine.
absolutely. And if he draws a land, he can hold off on the sprawl and make a 3/3 Spider on turn 2. He can go Simic Initiate and then Aquastrand Spider and have a 3/3 on the turn 2 against a fairly slow deck from.
Interesting. Meanwhile, on the back table, Aaron Brockman has taken game 1. So the battle for German supremacy goes to the more veteran of the two players.
Right.
The guy with half a dozen players.
We sort of have 2 returns going on here, right? Like, I mean, the Japanese, was kind of interesting. They did not put any players into the top 8.
Yeah, the rumors of the demise of Japanese Magic, I think, were greatly exaggerated. They took one Pro Tour off from putting up top 8s, and now here you got one guy going to be through to the finals.
It looked a little dicey at the beginning of this weekend.
So the forums were commenting on this actually. We made, you and I both. I think you had a comment in a blog, and I had a comment on the podcast saying that the Japanese were doing pretty weak, and look at all these guys who are on the bubble and not making it. And if you actually do the math and you look at the pass-through percentage by country, Japan did just fine. They actually did above average as countries go. They passed through more people, similar numbers to the States. I think the thing that threw it off a little bit is maybe some of the more familiar names just happen to be the ones on the bubble. But, I mean, if you lump that island together, which, I mean, we were kind of doing, and it's a bit stereotypical, but they did fine. Yeah. And they passed through at a, slightly above average rate. They've got 2 guys through to the top 8. They had a fine pro.
Two guys fighting to go through to the finals right now.
Right.
And then on the other table we have, perhaps a slower comeback, but Germany, was a dominant Magic country for a number of years. I mean, a lot of that was.
But it wasn't all Kai.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Dirk Babarowski is one of the. Well, aside from his success with Phoenix Foundation was one of the best players in the game.
Absolutely.
On his own.
And you go back a little earlier, and you get Per Kroger and Janusz Kuhn. You get Patrick Mello was a great player. There are plenty of good German players, and yeah, I think that there was definitely Germany clearly did fall off their game when Kai retired. But now here's Aaron Brockman and playing. Here's Chris Hutenberger, and Brockman is interesting because one of who his playtest partner is.
No.
Max Brock.
Max Brock,
the German who made top 8 at the last Pro Tour.
So I think maybe we're seeing a young, new Magic scene in Germany. A lot of young guys picking up, maybe inspired by Kai even.
I think that's exactly right. There was a power vacuum at the top, and they stepped in to fill it. And now they've established themselves as good players. They're moving on to Pro Tour top 8s. Meanwhile, Shuhei finally kept his 5-card hand. We are now 3 turns into game 2. Aquastrand Spider came down off of Utopia Sprawl on turn 2. Simic Initiate followed up as a turn 3 play for Usawa. He is now up to 3 mana. And Shuhei, meanwhile, you can see that he's sideboarded into the blue configuration of his deck, and he's got the graph guy again on turn 3.
But kind of surprised.
Right. And Minister of Impediments.
Minister of Impediments is pretty powerful card actually against a deck that puts all its eggs in one basket.
And doesn't have that much removal, right?
Right. Let's see what kind of removal he does have. Actually, I have his deck list right here. And Mortipede is sort of a. Oh, he's got a Char. That's an exciting piece of removal. And he's got 2 Pyromatics. Oh, okay.
That's pretty good.
Kind of trump the Master of Impediments. So he has a Dousing Gloom.
So a decent chunk of removal.
A decent suite of removal, for sure. He has a Seal of Doom.
That does sound pretty good. Some of the buzz at launch, we were talking about Shuhei as a player, but who's got the best deck in this top 8? It might very well be Takuya Osawa.
Joe Crosby couldn't imagine. He said he couldn't imagine his opponent
not having the best deck?
Well, no, he said it's not just a case of, like, oh, my opponent has the best deck. He said, I just can't imagine this guy losing. His deck seemed perfect.
Yeah, Crosby got swept 3-0. Each of the other quarterfinal matches went to Game 5. Osawa had the sweep, and everything was 3-2, 3-2, 3-2. Osawa added a Wartorch Goblin to his board and attacked with that Spider.
So here's something interesting.
Shuhei had made a 2-2 Minister of Impediments.
Well, he actually made 2 Minister of Impediments. Because
he can untap it now.
The Graph Mage can now untap the Minister for a blue and 1.
Quite saucy. So the board is now a 2-2 Minister of Impediments and a Graph Mage that can untap things with +1/+1 counters for Shuhei Nakamura. He's going to trade that 1/1 Graph Mage with Wartorch Goblin, though. Meanwhile, so Wartorch Goblin trades. Osawa deals 3 damage with his Aquatrans Spider and his Simic Initiate.